Welcome to the Discipline Hustle
Oh,
podcast, where we
sorry about
help
that.
businesses and individuals learn, build, and grow by listening to the stories of others that are out there. And so today we have Majid Tabibzadeh from Viva Concepts. So the first question we have, Majid, thanks first of all for being here, is describe your business. What does Viva Concepts do?
Well, first, thank you for having me on the podcast. It's good to meet you as well. I've known Rob for some time. Um, my company, in a nutshell, is a marketing company. Obviously, marketing could be in this day and age could go many different directions. We have decided to specialize in high-end print type of marketing, like direct mail, as well as other products that could be used internally to grow a business.
Perfect. Now, what is your origin story? I love asking this question. So, what's your origin story? How did it get to where you're at today?
All right. So I've always been in marketing. I'm
Okay.
an entrepreneur at heart. I have done half a dozen companies that we had very nice exits. The largest one was a company called Neopets, which we sold for almost $170 million, and then some other ones along the way. We we found out that there is a science to business.
Hmm.
It is not by luck. In addition to hard work, in addition to luck, there's a lot of technology be- behind building a business. The simplicity of a normal business is you have a front door, you have a back door, you get new customers through the front door, you lose customers through the back door. And to grow that business, you need to have a lot of new customers coming, and you have to try to close the back door as close to shut as possible so you don't lose those customers, and then this thing will grow. Right? So that's the fundamental that we look at in growing a business. And then we said, all right, what is the science of the front door? What is the science of the back door? And then we said, okay, with the front door, you're dealing definitely with the cost of acquisition. Every customer for every business has a price tag connected to them.
Hmm.
And you're looking at an ROI. The ROI is what the business will make from that new customer. And then on the back door, you have an attrition value for every business. Some businesses are losing 10% of their customers. Most businesses, they lose upwards of 60, 70, 80% of their customers over a long period of
Hmm.
time because they don't engage in the science of retaining their customer. They are so focused on getting new customers.
Acquiring. Yep.
Acquisition, yeah. And they don't realize that cost of acquisition is very high for most businesses.
Hmm.
Yes, it is.
It may be $1 for Starbucks, and the ROI may be $6 per customer. So they still are doing a good margin. But for a dentist, which is a profession I work with a lot, the cost of acquisition is anywhere from $300 to $500, but the ROI is $1,500 to $2,500. So it always makes
So
sense
so how
if
did you even say, okay, here's a problem and we have a way to solve it? Like, how did you get to that point to say, oh, okay, hey, here's a problem we know, and we know how to fix this problem?
uh, in every industry or segment, there are some commonplace information that could be idea that is very visible
Hmm.
because of the sophistication of the players in that business. So we look at a dentist or an attorney or a medical practitioner, and they're good at what they do,
Hmm.
but very few of them have really turn a keen eye on what is my acquisition, where do I get my customers from.
Sure.
They think that they just open a shingle, they
Hmm.
open a practice, hang up a shingle, and then people are going to flock to their
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But we're not
build it and
we're
they
not in
will
that
come.
stage anymore, right?
Yeah.
Those good days are long
Yeah.
gone. Everybody now has to fight for every
What's funny is my brother went to med school out here, right, in Arizona.
uh,
And I asked him, I said, "Hey, do you guys have like a business class? Because physicians open up, like you said, they're going to go out, they open up their own practice." He says, "No, they have like a weekend seminar." And I'm like, "Really?" So they're trying to teach the physicians and because this is also dentists out there. Okay, this is how you start your own practice, and they plan on doing that in one weekend, right? Like, so I understand what you're saying, right? The dentists, all these professionals like that, they don't go to school to learn how to run a business or a practice. They just practice, right?
yeah. And what's good is that, you know, a lot of these dentists or doctors, even if they get two patients a day, they break even.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So they're not necessarily hurting by not doing marketing or not growing their practice. They break even or they make a little money, but there is so much more that can be gotten if you science that practice,
Mm-hmm.
both on the internal and on the external. So there is definitely a need, and that's why consultants thrive in the healthcare community, because those that acknowledge that I am weak on my business sense, uh, it, they're willing to pay 50,
Right.
$100,000 for a consultant to come in and spend a few hours with them and tell them what they need to do. And many of those consultants are very successful because they come in and they change that mentality around, and it's all about the mindset.
Right.
You have the basic skills to be a practitioner. You have very little skills other than common sense to do the business of
Yeah.
dentistry or
Yeah.
medicine. So let's combine those two and uh, become very successful.
So
So
did
what
you?
So
year did this happen, Majid? When did this hit you? When you decided on Viva Concepts?
the Viva Concepts is the latest of my endeavors. I'm still an entrepreneur and I have other investments. It started about 15 years ago,
Okay.
and I was approached by my current partner, is extremely intelligent gentleman, dentist named Dr.
Oh,
Gregory
okay.
Hughes,
Okay.
and he's phenomenal in his common sense approach to building dental practices. And he was looking for a way to scale that up, because again, consulting and coaching is very limited, and you can only help so many people, and scaling it is not a easy undertaking.
Yeah.
Marketing is your setting up a system, and you
Mm-hmm.
start throwing out hundreds of thousands of distribution points, whether it's a collateral like a direct mail piece or email or text or
Social
clicks.
media, for that
Social,
matter.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
So you were so
So
you were approached by a dentist, because I was going to ask you, how did you get into the? Did you have family that was it? But you were approached by a dentist. Okay, that makes
yeah,
sense then.
interesting enough, one of my previous companies that I started and successfully exited was an OSHA compliance company,
Oh,
which I started from scratch, one employee, and ultimately I sold it for $26 million in about a decade. And I was doing mostly dentists. So I was
okay. So you have that experience. You see, because I think a lot of people, they don't know what they don't know, right? They, especially even marketers. Hey, oh, I'm going to go focus on doctors, but they don't really know what's going on behind
yeah,
the scenes, right? So that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes
and
sense.
my products could be used in any industry.
Yeah.
I create gorgeous products for marketing for any business. I specialize in dentistry and healthcare
Yeah.
and this particular
Because I
vertical.
saw you brought that stuff in house, right? So you're are you printing this stuff in house now, or
That's
were
good.
you doing it? Were you outsourcing it before and said, "Hey, look, we're gonna do this in house now"? Or
Yeah, manufacturing is a very interesting universe, right? You get very greedy because you learn that if you buy this $100,000 machine,
yeah,
all of a sudden you can do this yourself at 5 cents
yeah,
instead of 15 cents, and then if you're selling it for 50 cents, now your margin is so much more, and you get sucked into that universe, and you start
Ah,
a couple of 100,000 here, a couple of 100,000 there, half a million here, and a million there, and
yeah,
before you know it,
yeah. That
you're
makes
you're
sense.
neck deep inside manufacturing.
No, that makes sense. I mean, I think a lot of businesses say, oh, nobody's going to go out and buy this $150,000 machine and do this themselves. So we're safe. But you said, well, hold on a second here. We could buy that and we could save and then make more money if we buy it. So
It's not just even making more. It's you have the control on the
yeah,
process. You're not reliant on a third party. So there are a lot of advantages
sure.
to being the manufacturer and the distributor and the wholesaler. You control the price point. You can negotiate a good deal for a customer. You can give a much better deal
Yeah.
for one customer, discriminate, and so forth. Uh, it gives you a lot more leeways and flexibility.
That makes sense.
That's a good segue into the next question that we have. So how has the current economy and your industry market trends affected the business? Because I know 2025 is quite interesting for quite a few businesses, and then we're coming off of COVID. So those two things in combination haven't done well for a lot of businesses. So maybe what's your story? Yeah.
Yes, I was one of those victims of COVID as well. It obviously impacted my business. A lot of my dentists closed, and then or they reduced or they downsized their businesses, and we had to do the same thing. So we were successful in staying afloat by reducing costs, reducing waste. We created our own internal Doge.
That's interesting because yeah, that's probably the only way to address that. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and it's funny. I know so many of my friends that they lost half of their business, but they
wow.
managed to reduce 70% of their waste
Right.
and overhead, so they became more profitable. So in some ways, we stayed successful and afloat. In a lot of ways now, from this basic, it's a lot easier to grow because I don't have the waste and I'm not going to make the same mistakes of those large overheads.
Yeah,
One
that makes sense.
example, I had an office, 10,000 square feet, paying about $30,000 a month rent with 15 employees inside, and then we had a shop where we manufactured the products. Because of COVID, we were forced to stop seeing clients, so my office was no longer needed. So I subleased my office. A lot of my employees were working out of the house. I saved $30,000 a month in one line item just on rent. And then I moved my offices into my shop because I was not entertaining clients anymore. So I didn't need to be in a high-end, office building, which is, very expensive.
Oh, that's a great example of using your existing business and as you were jokingly saying, using the Doge method of reducing the cost and therefore keeping the margins the same while the economy's retracting a little bit. So that's a great story. Yeah, I like that quite a bit.
So how was that? Like I'm always curious. So you mentioned did you have to reduce your team, your staff at all? So how
Oh
is
yeah.
that? I mean, I know there's a business side of it where you're like, hey, we just can't do it. But what about just like, I don't know how to say it, like the emotional side of it, right? I mean, these are people and I'm sure at some point you know who they are. It wasn't a big company. Like, how do you get through that? You have to do it for the business, but you're a good person, and as far as I know, right? So that's got to be tough. So how do you get through
Yeah.
that?
Honestly, and I'm so personally averse to terminating any employee.
Sure.
It was a combination. Some because you have also people that find other
Sure.
opportunities or move for different reasons. Or so all I did was, as people were leaving, I just didn't replace them.
Yeah.
The actual number of people that I terminated was actually maybe only one or two,
Oh wow.
because that position was being eliminated. A lot of them moved, and I just didn't replace them, and I gave their work to somebody else within
Got
the
it.
company. So those people started getting more. They actually got paid more by adding a few more tasks to them. and then ultimately I reduced the hours from 40 to 32, and then all of a sudden I had more. I could keep everybody, and they just had one extra day now in their schedule. So again, there is no easy way of doing this. With every business, it's going to be different. You're dealing with technical work as well, so you can't let go of people. But internally, you can do things, and if your culture within the office is a very friendly environment, people will make sacrifices. All my employees, have made a lot of sacrifices for me, and as I have made for them.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something very poignant in that statement about culture, because I think that's a very big part of it. As an employee works in a culture, and as an employee and also an executive at many places, that was very important to me, because I think that establishment of that relationship and understanding the culture makes difficult times easier. Nobody's looking forward to it, but it's understandable, and I think that makes it a little bit easier, Reggie. That a culture kind of perseveres through very many tough times. So I like that quite a bit.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, speaking of that whole thing of leaving or getting fired, well, I remember I was at Pacific Life, and I actually gave my resignation letter to my manager in order to move here to Arizona and work for ING. And because of our culture, we were all very close. And two things happened. Number one, my manager, she started to tear up when she's like, "Don't tell me," because I had the paper. She said, "Don't tell me." Don't. We went outside, and it was heartbreaking for me, and I was moving on just to a better opportunity, right? But that's the culture that we had. We were just all very close. We wanted everybody to succeed, and I will never forget that to your point, both of you guys, it's just that culture, I think, is very, very important, and regardless of whatever business that it is, because then your employees will work just that little bit harder.
Yeah.
Because they like you. They want to do well for you. Right? I know I do. Right? When I had these employers and managers that were like, "Hey, I knew that they were for me. They were doing everything they can to help me succeed. I'm working my butt off for them." Right? Not just for me, but because, hey, I want them to look good. So that makes sense. Now the other thing here is, obviously culture is big, but what is that one piece of advice that you would give yourself before starting any of the different businesses that you've had? What's that one piece of advice for yourself?
I am a little bit naive, and I have noticed that my weak point is I don't do enough due diligence on a concept before I jump in. And it is, in this day and age, you can come up with 1,000 different business ideas or concepts that they sound phenomenal on surface. 1,000, 1,000,000, right? You can put all kinds of angles and bells and whistles on it and make it sound sizzlingly hot. There is no shortage of them. I think if I had taken a much stronger, stringent due diligence process with the different people that have come to me and have suggested ideas and asked for investment or brought up opportunities, if I was far more stricter with them rather than saying, "Oh yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, here's 100,000, here's 200,000. Let's invest. Let's do this," I would have been far more ahead. I invested a lot from some of these exits that I had. I invested a lot in dozens and dozens of companies, and a lot of them, they sounded great. They all sounded great, but within a year or two or three, they started struggling, and the COVID or something hit, and it just knocked them over.
Great advice.
Yeah.
No, to really self-reflect and think about, because I think that's important to look in the mirror and, you're not everything. You're not God per se. So, you're a human being and you have blind spots or weaknesses. So identifying those definitely makes some sense. And I'm sure you have over the years, Majid. You're a very successful guy. So, no, that's very sage advice for yourself a long time ago, but also for our listeners too, to heed that advice about due diligence and making sure you look at as many angles as you can, and when you can, get somebody else to take a look at that, because sometimes you are, it's a blind spot for you, like you said, naive, in a certain area. So that's a good advice. All right, so now the second one is, what piece of advice would you give to someone else who wanted to start a business? Now that could be used for them for sure, but something a little bit different that you'd be, I'm sure you've mentored people over the years. So what kinds of commonalities do you find out of that mentorship?
What I usually have seen, particularly when it comes to, a lot of people like to be entrepreneur. There's obviously a sizzle. There is an attraction because you're controlling your destiny. It's exciting to have a goal and a vision and fight for that. And those are really great qualities to have that entrepreneurial drive and want to make it on your own rather than just be an employee. What they usually fall short is the estimation of effort. It's very important to realize what kind of sacrifices you need to make. And really, all failures, in my personal experience in life, is a misestimation of effort. Whether it's finances, whether it's time, whether it's commitment, whether it's discipline, whether it's the balancing of different parts of life. Because obviously, whatever business you're looking at, you still have a family, you still have your own personal needs, you still have other groups you're committed to, you still have wider zones that you're participating in. Where is the balancing act? What am I giving up in order to do this? Am I going to put a big damper on my marriage because I'm committing 12 hours or 16 hours to my business? Am I spending enough time with my kids? Am I going to have to sacrifice this? So this misestimation of effort is what I have seen in various applications, be the downfall of, it ends up affecting your marriage or your work, or long run damaging your project.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
That's good. I like that miscalculation of effort. That's that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people do that, right? They try to start something and then they realize either one, oh my gosh, this is going to take way more time than I thought, right? And then you just, or two, it's like, wow, this is too hard. Like, it is too tough, right? I thought I was going to be making $10,000 a month by working 2 hours a week, right? At least that's what the ad said, right? So, right. So
good marketing.
Yeah, right.
Good marketing.
General contractors are notorious for that. They come and say, "Oh, yeah, I can do it in 2 days, and it's going to cost this much." And then they come in, and it's 3 times that, and it's
that makes sense. Yeah,
that's true of a lot of businesses.
And it's every aspect. It's funny, but that concept of, all right, what is the estimation of effort needed for me to take this? You always have an existing scene, and you always have an ideal scene. And the ideal scene is somewhat knowable, and the existing scene is very obvious, right? So what is this journey going from the existing scene to this ideal scene way over here, right? And it will show you that, I have 2 customers, I need to be at 2,000. I have 2 employees, I need to be at 20. And I have this much space, I have this. So if you can visualize both, and say, what is the estimation of effort? What do I need to do to go from here to there? Then all of a sudden your planning and your things starts becoming a science rather than, all right, by my own bootstraps, I love that movie, Build It and They Will Come, by Kevin Costner.
Yeah. Field of
Right.
Field of
Dreams.
Dreams. Yes.
Did you
Yes,
guys see
sir. Yes.
the Field of Dreams? Correct.
Yeah.
This concept of Build It and They Will Come,
Do
I
you,
haven't been able to.
I have a question. This is random. This is not on any of our lists, but I'm curious. Do you see a lot of, we'll say, entrepreneurs um, stop themselves or hold themselves back from taking a step into true entrepreneurship because maybe they've worked in the corporate world for so long? It's like they're saying, well, no, I can't do this because, hey, I was working for this Fortune 500 company and they weren't doing it this way, so I can't do it that way, or I'm gonna fail. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like, I know for me, there's a lot of times where I have this great idea and I work through the concept, and I'm like, looking at all the, like you said, looking at all the different angles. And then a part of me in the back of my head is saying, no, 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 you can't. It's almost like I know too much sometimes, and instead of kind of letting a little bit go and saying, hey, what did it say? It's paralysis by analysis, right? I think I do that too much. Do you see other entrepreneurs kind of go through that themselves, or did you go through something like that?
Fortunately, no, because I've never been on that track
Mm,
of, and I've seen that track, right? I know a lot of people that have had the golden handcuffs where they're making $50,000 a month in salary, so they they become lazy and complacent, and the money is too good, and it's a cushy job and very little responsibility on the failure side, job security to some extent,
mhm,
so they could be spoiled to that. The entrepreneur universe is obviously the exact opposite of that. You go from $50,000 a month salary to $5,000 a month, plus a potential of $1 million, right? So you're making a huge leap of faith on
Mhm.
your skill set by making that transition, and the safety net is gone,
right.
right? Now is sink or swim, right? um, so again, I was fortunately never exposed to that cushy side where I question my own uh, doubts, whether should I do this or should I not do this. I was always wanted to do the entrepreneur world from the first day that I started working, and it was always high risk, high reward, high risk, high reward.
Mhm,
The only time I started, changing and adjusting my mentality was I had a few big rewards, and I said, all right, I'm getting later in my life, and I don't want to work 16 hours a day anymore, and I need to readjust my investment portfolio. I can't be high risk, high reward. It has to be, a lot of it is moderate risk or low risk. And then a small portion goes into high risk, high reward. Uh, but I can see that phenomena occurring to a lot of people like yourself,
mhm,
and uh, you've been used to this fixed corporate culture, which is a universe away and different
mhm.
than that entrepreneurial culture.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That
No,
makes sense.
totally makes
All
sense.
right, so we have, and I don't know if you saw that email Rob sent to you, but we always like to kind of throw a curveball. Maybe, I don't know. We have a random question. So let me see if I'm gonna share my
This is the
screen.
fun part of the
Yeah,
interview too. All of it's been fun, Majid. I always love talking to you.
A
yeah.
But
surprise.
this is the fun part for us. Yeah.
So I'm
So
gonna I'm gonna share my screen, and basically it's a random question generator, right? So it's a random question,
Oh,
and I'm
that's
gonna
pretty
spin it.
cool.
Yeah, and then we'll spin it, and we have no idea. They're all clean questions. I hope. I think. I did AI to help generate some of these questions. Okay, here we go. Oh, this is interesting. If you could create your own holiday, what would it be called, and how would people celebrate it? Ooh, that's a good one.
that's a good one.
Yeah. All right. Uh,
There's no wrong answer here,
Yeah.
Majid.
this would be a holiday everyone or for something for
What-
myself?
It's whatever you want. It could be just for you and your family. It could be just for everybody. It could be for whoever you want.
You know, I would look at who is not getting acknowledged enough. To be honest with you, I think husbands are getting the short end of this thing at this time of the society. Before we were the rulers of the household, we were the rulers of this tiny little bit, and
That's
Oh
funny.
my God.
I
so
always that's funny. Okay.
Now Father's Day is
Husband
coming
acknowledge-
up. Father's Day is coming up pretty soon here in June. So we
No,
have
no,
that.
Father's
We
Day
have
is very
that. But
different.
short of that, that's maybe the only day they
that's
really recognize this.
That's funny.
There is no day where I get acknowledged for my contribution to my household as a husband, to my wife.
So
We need to
Husband's Day.
fix that. We need to fix that, Majid. That's a good
Absolutely,
holiday.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think a lot of men in this world would probably go for that. There's the other half that probably would say no, but at least half the people would agree with you. So how's that?
Well, I fight for myself. They can ask for a wife day.
That's funny.
Great. Well, we'd love to have you.
Absolutely, it would be my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. It was great chatting with you guys.
Yeah, we'll definitely do this again. And again, it's vivaconcepts.com. Majid is the co-owner of that and also a partner. So I tell the audience to go out and find, if you have any kind of marketing needs, whether it be in the dental space or medical space or, even your regular, space, he can help out. And he has a whole, whole system really registered towards getting a lot more business your way. So I encourage you to check him out. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks,
so
Majid.
Okay, Majid.
bet.
Thank you very much. Take
All right.
care. Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.